What's going on, everyone? This is the My Aggie Nation podcast / post press conference video. We're doing all together in one as we lead into the Christmas holiday because Christmas always comes a little bit early nowadays. It's early signing day for Texas A&M football and college football around the country. Texas A&M signs 16 players as a part of their 2023 class that, at least as of the time of this recording, was ranked number 14 in the 247 composite team rankings, and I believe 6th in the SEC on those same rankings. Alex, of course, I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle, alongside Alex Miller, also of the Eagle. Alex, what's your initial takeaways from this class? I know as far as recruiting things go at the Eagle, you're the most dialed in on that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wanted to talk last year just about A&M's number one class and, how did the Aggies do it? And oh my gosh, there's all these 5 stars and holy crap, this kid flipped and this kid committed. And this year's it's just kind of been a little lackluster. I mean, that's just the simplest way to put it. I mean, yes, you got a couple of big names, most notably Ruben Owens has signed. They've still got David Hicks committed, 5-star defensive lineman out of Katy. He's reportedly supposed to sign on Friday, but I mean, this is not a bad signing class at all. But in comparison to what A&M had last year and what you thought A&M was potentially building toward, it's certainly kind of a letdown. And we can get into it in a minute, but they missed out on some key targets throughout this cycle that. If they would have had maybe 2 or 3 other guys in this class, we'd be sitting here, Travis, talking about. Man, A&M went 5-7, but they still inked a top 8, maybe even a top 5 class, and that's just kind of out of the question right now.
I think if you ask, and we did, and Jimbo Fisher did kind of lead it off, saying that with the size of the class that they took in last year, that they were expecting a smaller class this year. That doesn't excuse missing out on some of those guys, like you said. In essence, it kind of changes a little bit from last year when you didn't know that you were going to have 24 guys from the 2022 class leaving via the transfer portal and having to get back up to those 85 scholarships. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And really along that note, Jimbo Fisher said didn't really give any firm numbers as far as transfer portal or rounding out the signing class by the second National Signing Day in February, where they're going to be, how close to net zero they're going to be from where they were last year in recouping some of those transfer guys. But that's a conversation for a later podcast. Let's get a little bit into some of these guys. We mentioned Ruben Owens out of El Campo, a 5-star guy. Jimbo said he can run, he can cash. He is just the all-around kind of back that you'd want to get. He kind of stands out as the bell cow, maybe even a guy that could see some playing time next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about it, when especially considering A&M is losing Devon A-Chain to the draft. I mean, running back's kind of an unproven position for A&M, and you go down the list, he's the only running back that's signed. I know Dalton Brooks is a guy that's played running back, but Jimbo was pretty clear he's going to be playing safety here at A&M. And so, yes, running back is a position of need because I think that a lack of good depth this year and guys being ready and able to play, that's part of the reason why A&M's offense just was not as great this season. And so, having just a guy as talented as Ruben Owens coming in, I mean, that is a big win. And you think about it, too, he was committed to Louisville for a long time, and kind of out of the blue commits to Louisville, a school you probably wouldn't think a 5-star kid from Texas would be pledging to. And then of course they go through a coaching change, and the day that he decommits, he later commits to A&M. And Travis, what's interesting too is that before he committed, A&M, I don't think they had a skill guy committed in this class, and that was when it started getting into that limbo period when Daryl Dickey was let go and they started the offensive coordinator search. And now you look at it, they basically flipped Ruben Owens from Louisville. They flipped, where is he? Marcel Reed from Ole Miss, quarterback out of Nashville. that Jimbo, I mean, he led off talking about Marcel Reed, and shouldn't be surprised. Jimbo's quarterback guy. And then today they get their first receiver of the class from Tulsa, and Micah Tease, who was committed to Arkansas earlier this week. So they've been able to flip some guys late that I wouldn't. Certainly, adding Reuben Owens is not salvaging the class, but the fact of the matter is A&M needed skill position guys. They have had guys at receiver leave. Think about Devin Price, some of these other guys. Chris Marshall's not returning, and so wide receiver is certainly a position of need all of a sudden. And so being able to get some of these guys was a big win for A&M late, even though maybe they're not, the big 5-star recruit that A&M was used to getting it last year this time of year.
Yeah, Marcel Reed, you mentioned the quarterback. You can't necessarily talk about Marcel Reed without bringing up Austin Novosad, the Texas quarterback who was committed for Baylor a long time, flipped from Baylor to Oregon today. His whole family is Aggies. He's a guy that A&M wanted to lean on hard to be the quarterback for this class. They didn't get it, so Marcel Reed steps up to be the second option for that class. Mr. Tennessee is a dual threat guy, can both run it and throw it. I want to say, let's see what the stats are here.
Yeah, he led his team to a state championship appearance this season. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Career 6,357 passing yards and 62 passing touchdowns. Rushed for 2,277 yards and 38 scores. Pretty solid dual threat numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, Mr. Tennessee football, that's pretty impressive. State championship appearances as a junior and senior. Thinking about guys like that, they signed Chance Johnson today from College Station, a local kid. He was a key part of College Station's defense, a guy that we talk about on our high school podcast throughout the season. And linebackers, certainly a position of need, especially when Anthony Hill decommitted. I mean, that was a big loss for A&M. When you look back at this recruiting cycle for A&M, it was such a big win when they got Anthony Hill because he was such a priority target for them, knowing that they needed a linebacker. And it was such a big blow when not only he decommitted from A&M, but then he signs with Texas, who is, one of A&M's top rivals in recruiting and, potentially soon to be on the field, and could be when Anthony's playing with the Longhorns, could be suiting up against the Aggies here in a couple of years. So that was a big blow to A&M's recruiting cycle when you look back at it.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point there. So you also brought up Chance Johnson, the linebacker from College Station, the local guy. You being on our high school team, have gotten to see him play some. What can Aggie fans expect from Chance?
Yeah, I mean, he's just a solid dude. He's smart. He's well built. I mean, yes, he's only 6'1", 210 pounds, but he is a guy that is a strength coach's son. He's got a great
at A&M.
At A&M, by the way. And to be clear, Jimbo said that was the offer and the signing was not indicative of, his dad's just on staff. No, this kid's actually good. And so that's a good addition for A&M. And, not a ton of local kids end up going to A&M to play football. They have in other sports, but, it's kind of every 3 or 4 years. The last one was Devin Price. Before that, Riley Garner. And so both from A&M Consolidated. This is the first kid from College Station to sign with A&M in football. And so he's a guy that, was on the D-line in last year's run to a state championship game and then moved more so to kind of a stand-up edge linebacker kind of player in a 3-4 kind of look. Think of it kind of like an Avon Miller type of position. And so, that kind of bodes well for what A&M does. I mean, think about what they did with a guy like Anai White, who more of a slender frame, not quite a linebacker, but not quite a defensive end either, kind of a tweener guy. And even a guy like LT Overton, you saw him playing in that kind of position this year too. So that's kind of where I think Chance Johnson fits in. But good pickup for the Aggies here late in this cycle. I thought it was interesting too.
Well, hold on. Before you get on that, I want to say one more thing. When you mentioned the LT Overton and the Nye White, it was interesting what they did last year, because a lot of times when fans would look on and say that's a three-man front. Why is A&M in a three-man front in this running situation, or a team that runs the ball a lot? The three-man front was actually three down linemen, and LT Overton or Nye White stood up, sometimes even over in coverage.
Even both of them at the same time.
Right, and so if they're going to stick with that scheme with DJ Durkin, that's an important that having that kind of edge rusher that's a little bit of a hybrid is important in this system. What were you going to say?
I thought it was interesting, going back to Reuben Owens and even Dalton Brooks and Bravion Rogers from LaGrange. It was funny. Jimbo called them the three amigos down from the coastal bend. And so, those are three guys that play at a smaller classification, Dalton Brooks in 2A, and then both Bravion Rogers and Reuben Owens in Class 4A. If you haven't seen Dalton Brooks play, I mean, he is just a ball player. He is really good. He played on both sides of the ball. Shiner won back-to-back state championships when he was a sophomore and junior. And so I'm trying to pull up. Yeah, here he is. And so, all-state kind of player, offensive MVP as a sophomore. And so A&M's certainly getting a guy that is just an absolute playmaker. And then you throw in a guy like Bravion Rogers. A&M needs cornerbacks. Like, that's just the fact of the matter. They need guys at corner, and he's a guy that might have a chance to play pretty early, considering where A&M's at that position.
Yeah. Before we get too far off, our high school team, you and Jake Weiss, went out to College Station High School to check out the signing day action there, and you got to talk to Chance Johnson. Let's hear a little bit of that interview right now.
So first off, Chance, you signed as well today, signed with the Aggies. Just how's that feel to you, man?
It feels amazing. It's a blessing to have the opportunity to go to an SEC school and compete and get a great education and life after football.
I know it was kind of a busy process for you guys. You're pretty happy to be done with the kind of the process of everything?
Yes, sir. I'm glad to be done. It's a stress reliever.
And, obviously, I know you're wearing some blue for Marquise, man. You, Marquise, AJ, you guys all kind of signed today. Big exciting day for you guys. Just how much does it mean to you to kind of have, all three of you guys sign today and sign with big programs?
It means a lot because I know what my other brothers been through to get to this moment. So it's like a great feeling to know that they're going off and doing something great. Also, like all three of us together, so it's awesome.
And then how excited are you, man, to be going to A&M, kind of staying here in town? You're the first College Station Cougar, to sign with A&M. Just how cool is that kind of for you?
It's an amazing feeling. I mean, ultimately a blessing. I guess it's great to be the first one.
Yeah.
I feel like others could too, but it's all a blessing for everybody to be able to go play Division I football. So.
And what are you kind of most excited, I guess, about going to A&M and playing linebacker there?
Really having the chance to compete and have a great relationship with the coaches. So going in there working and knowing I'm playing with a great D-line, great defensive coaches, and an amazing head coach.
And then I know you'll be having your ceremony, or you'll be probably having a ceremony a little later. Is that right?
Yes, sir. February 4th.
Gotcha. So obviously, still a big celebration for you coming later this month, or later in a couple months. But just gonna do anything tonight though to celebrate maybe with the family?
Yes, sir. Me, my mom, and dad will go eat tonight. Yes, sir.
It's good to hear from Chance Johnson there. Thanks to him for giving us a few minutes and talking with us. We can't finish this out without talking about the offensive line, because that's the position group that they took the most players in this year for, at least as far as the early signing period. Some good names down the list. The one that stands out to me is Colton Thomason from Smithson Valley, because you got to see him play this year when I believe it was College Station ran through there on the way to state. What do you like? What do you not like about this group, and especially looking at Thomason, who you've seen play?
Colton Thomason is a huge dude. I stood right next to him during their warm-ups, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is a giant. Literally, he is 6'8", 325 pounds, and he seemed to be the guy. Think about how good Bobby Taylor was. Kind of that self-recruiter within the recruiting class for that number 122 class. Colton Thomason seemed to be kind of the vocal leader among the commits, once he committed to A&M, it was pretty early. You know, he's been committed to A&M for a while, and he never really wavered in that pledge. And so having a guy like that, you know, when you think about when you're recruiting, you need guys like that to, you know, kind of help your class. But on the field, he is a huge dude. And looking at some of these other guys, I mean, Nikhil Bertrand from Philadelphia, he's 6'6", 340. Chase Basantis, okay, he's probably the top-rated guy from this group. He's 6'5", 305 out of New Jersey. If I can pull up his stuff right here.
And being the top-rated guy and looks like to be the smallest guy of the group, too.
Yeah. And so he's the number one offensive lineman out of the state of New Jersey. And, you know, they had a state championship game appearance this season. And so, you know, A&M needs depth at offensive line. They need quality depth at offensive line. And some of these guys are going to provide that. Not to mention you have TJ Shanahan, who, you know, played at Austin Westlake. They had a three-peat state championship run. He got hurt at the end of the season. Not quite sure what his status is going into the spring. But, I mean, he just comes from a school that all they do is win. And so, you know, A&M did pretty solid, it seems, on the offensive line, and they really needed to, because at times last year, A&M's offensive line was just continued to be a work in progress and a lot of injuries, and that's where you need that depth, that quality depth to come in to, you know, be able to keep trudging along, especially in the trenches. I mean, we talk about it all the time. It starts up front, line of scrimmage in the SEC, and, you know, these are the guys that they're going to be turning to the next couple years to get that done.
It was hard this year to focus completely on just the players and the class because of the looming cloud hovering over the athletic or the football program, and that is figuring out what the blueprint of the offense is going to look like. And that starts with hiring a new offensive coordinator, and that also goes into figuring out if Jimbo Fisher is going to hand over the play calling duties to whoever this new offensive coordinator is. They fired Daryl Dickey, the former offensive coordinator, end of November. So they've been on the recruiting trail about 3.5 weeks with that spot being vacated. Of course, Daryl Dickey, the offensive coordinator, typically in the past in Jimbo Fisher's offenses has been a helper more than a guy who actually runs the offense because, of course, Jimbo Fisher ran the offense, called the plays as the head coach as well. He had some interesting comments about not only the recruiting process. Well, first, let's just get into the fact that he said not having an offensive coordinator didn't affect recruiting any of these guys. He said that in a kind of vague sense that the routes are the routes and they're going to stay the same, and these guys know what offense looks like. It's committing to the program, and so he was quick to jump in to say that having no offensive coordinator didn't affect the recruiting any this year. And they were able to pull in, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, all of their offensive skill players since Daryl Dickey has been fired.
Oh, yeah, and we didn't even mention Jaden Platt. He's the tight end from Hazlitt, Eden High School up north of Fort Worth. And, yeah, I mean, what's crazy is that's true. I mean, you got a quarterback, you got a running back, you got a receiver, you got a tight end. And, yes, it's only one of each, but less than a month ago you had none at any of those positions. So that was a huge deal for A&M to get something when they had nothing, and even more so because, yes, the offense is still in limbo. A&M have not hired an offense coordinator. Yeah,
let's hear what Jimbo Fisher had to say about where that lies with the offensive coordinator, the timetable, and what that looks like for A&M. And then finally, would you have a timeline on when you might hire the OC? And
no, when the right time comes.
Or is it going to look like someone that kind of looks similar to your style? Or
no, we're talking to multitudes of people. We're focusing on recruiting like we were here, and we'll get the best guys that can move the ball. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, just for instance, I had some quality control guys guys we were talking to hire, and guys have run this offense and that offense and offense. And when you draw it on the board, there ain't a hill of beans between none of it. I keep saying that. Whether it's, you keep saying pro style, run and shoot, or not run and shoot, but was it spread or what do you call it, air raid? All their routes are the same. just how you do things. There's multiple little things. Football's football, and over's an over, a dig's a dig. So we'll get the right guy that we think can fit and move the football.
And then in regards to the new OC, when will you make a decision on if you call the play still or if the new OC calls the plays?
We'll wait and see what goes in. Hopefully they will, so I can diverse. And there's a lot of things going on now in college football that the head coach, my job has changed so much in the last 2 years, it's ridiculous. Probably more so as head coaches, things you got to deal with away from ball more in the last 2 years than it's ever been in college football, maybe ever, because of all the things that go on and the circumstances because of the new things that go on. So we'll see when we get them in here.
That was Jimbo Fisher talking a little bit about how that offensive coordinator search is going. No real timetable. And it could come from any variety of offensive backgrounds, because Jimbo Fisher said, football is football, was his quote. So here's my real question. Here's my biggest thing coming into this, and it was the first line of questioning I presented to Jimbo. You get 85 scholarships for a football team. They're down 22 scholarships because 22 of the 24 from last year's class were walk-ons. So you're down 22 scholarships, plus those 3 who are going early to the NFL.
It's 25.
And then plus the graduation. We won't know the exact number.
Maybe Anais Smith. He still hasn't made a decision.
You're getting darn near, if not over, 30 available scholarships. You're going to fill 16 of those here, but that still leaves a hefty chunk that you have to either continue to recruit at the high school level or bring into the transfer portal. I just don't see how A&M gets to 85 scholarships, and that's not counting if they're going to throw a few at some 12th man type guys who earned, by their hustle, who aren't going to see a whole lot of playing time. The Sam Matthews types of those kind of guys. Not counting those, I don't see how they're going to get to a legitimate 85 scholarships by that time comes, unless they just absolutely raid the transfer portal. But by every report and everything we're seeing, there's not a whole lot of names being floated out there about interest in coming to A&M.
Yeah, what's interesting, it will be interesting to see, what ends up happening, especially once the bowl games end, and once, maybe some of these New Year's Six bowl games and even the playoff ends, and, you've got maybe some of the higher rated guys that would have entered the transfer portal. The fact of the matter is there's so many guys in the transfer portal that, they don't all find landing spots, which is sad, by the way. But I think the bigger question is, can A&M replace what they lost with the type of talent and the quality of depth that they had? I mean, they've lost a lot of their backups, and so that's been a big deal. And can you replace those guys with the same caliber of players that are going to be able to come in and do that? The good news for A&M is that the transfer portal is still open through the middle of January. They're going to have the second signing period for high school, and they can still hit the portal at the end of the spring in that second window that they've now established. But at the same time, they're going to have to make sure that they don't lose guys in that second window again.
Sure. And to be fair to A&M and to the coaching staff, like we've said all along, if you look at there was always the talk of the mass exodus because A&M had a 5-win season. People, especially kids from that number 1 recruiting class last year, were going to get fed up and they were going to leave. Don't mince words about it. A&M leads the SEC in players in the transfer portal. But if you look at the profile of the player that's in the portal, like you said, it's the number 2 line on the depth chart all the way across, pretty much. It's guys who probably weren't going to start next year, but might be depth players. And so it is key. And I think the transfer portal is going to be even more key than the high school recruits in this season for the Aggies, because one of the problems that plagued them last year was immaturity. It was on the field, off the field. It was just experience. And so I think even if you have a guy who might not be quite as many stars as the guy that you lost, I think if you bring in a guy who has experience and knows how to not only handle himself on the field, but the guy who knows how to manage classes and carry himself off the field, A&M's going to be in a better spot than they were last year. It's just if they're going to be able to get enough of those guys in, that can make a difference to bolster that depth.
The good news for A&M is they kept the core of the guys that are the starters and the young talent that really emerged. Connor Wegman's coming back. Evan Stewart's coming back. Donovan Green's coming back. Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, Bryce Anderson, Jacoby Matthews. I mean, the list goes on and on. And the guys that played and separated themselves as kind of the cream of the crop of that number one class, they're mostly back sans, the Denver Harrises and the Chris Marshall stuff. I mean, that's the good news for A&M is that, yes, they have lost a ton of guys and they certainly have work to do. But the good news for A&M is that they have kept the core of what they had and where they could go these next couple years.
Exactly. Let's close out with this. What's the one player on here that you're the most excited to see, maybe to get fired up in fall camp?
Whew. Okay. I'm going to go – I definitely got to go Reuben Owens. I mean, he's just such an electric player. I didn't get to see him when they played Navasota. They're in the same district, but got to, look at the box score, and I've seen some of his highlights. That dude can ball. I mean, he is a runner. He is really good, and A&M needs him to be that guy out the gate because, Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss, they started coming along at the end of the season, but they're still not they're neither of them are proven commodities still. And so being able to have that depth and have a guy with the potential to come in and do something like that, that's certainly something to watch. And I'm curious, we didn't even mention this guy, but Javon Thomas, guy out of South Oak Cliff in Dallas, back-to-back state champ, and dude's just a ball player. He played a lot of offense this year. You watched them when they played P&G in the title game. Wasn't playing a ton of defense. They had a loaded secondary, by the way, and he's a guy that I'm interested to see as well. A&M's got some really good young talent in that safety room, and curious to see what they can do at corner because that's certainly a position of need.
Well, since you took my two, I'm going to go down the line, and I'm going to continue with a theme from last year, and I'm going to go Jaden Platt because, I had a lot of questions about that tight end room last year. Like,
yes,
who's going to play? How is it all going to work? How do you, in today's football, do you even have that many tight ends on a roster? And I still kind of feel like I have a lot of questions about what that tight end room is going to be. But Jimbo Fisher perked my interest because he's a guy that said he had like a 5.6 ERA, GPA.
That's not very
that's
good.
not a good no, but a 5.6 or 5.1 GPA is ridiculous.
Yeah,
he's aerospace engineering.
I mean, okay, he's a guy, we didn't really talk about him. A&M flipped him from Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
He was between A&M, Stanford, and Florida. Newsflash, Stanford and Florida are really good academic schools, and A&M has a really good engineering program, so it's no surprise that this kid's pretty smart. So,
just hitting, he needed to throw like a UTEP or a Colorado in there just to hit all of the time zones.
Yeah, what's like a really smart school in Mountain Time Zone? Is there one? Is Utah a good school?
We'll go with Utah. I don't know. I don't know if there's any like.
BYU, is that a good school?
BYU's a pretty good
BYU's
school.
a good school?
Yeah.
I would not say Arizona or Arizona State.
No.
Either way, this kid's really smart.
Yes.
And we'll see if he's pretty good on the football field too. But A&M adding to that deep tight end room, they got all these guys.
I'm not going to lie. I'm surprised that we talked almost 30 minutes about...
Hey, one more thing.
Well, keep going.
If you haven't seen the video of Terry and York, the linebacker who committed from Temple, he was committed to Baylor, decommitted, committed to A&M, signed with A&M. Great video. Go watch it. It's a good one. He seems like he's a hardworking player. So A&M needed depth at linebacker too. So
yeah, there you go. Thanks everyone for tuning in and for listening to this week's edition of the My Aggie Nation podcast, as well as this little post-signing day press conference recap that we had. Be sure to find all of our coverage from today, not only from the A&M level, but from the high school level at theeagle.com and also the A&M site at myaggienation.com. So for Alex Miller, I'm Travis Brown. This is the My Aggie Nation podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Merry Christmas.
Actually, you're right. We'll see you probably after the Christmas holiday. So have a good Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.